Harry, how does it
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
It's Friday, you bastards. I want to start here because 56 years ago today, this man was brutally assassinated in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas. And Donald Trump still thinks that he is the president who's been treated the worst. And I also want to start here because that's how old the argument for Medicare for all is. 56 years ago.
The Constitution of the United States did not make the President or the Congress powerless. It gave them definite responsibilities to advance the general welfare, and that is what we're attempting to do. And then I read that this bill will sap the individual self-reliance of Americans. I can't imagine anything worse or anything better to sap someone's self-reliance than to be sick, alone, broke, or to have saved for a lifetime and put it out in a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. This argument that the government should stay out, that it saps our pioneer stock. I used to hear that argument when we were talking about raising the minimum wage to $1.25.
Oh, my God.
The fact of the matter is, what saps anyone's self-reliance is working 60 hours at straight time, or working at 85 or 95 or $1 an hour. In England, the entire cost of medicine for people of all ages, all of it, doctors, the choice of doctors, hospitals, from the time you're born to the time you die, are included in a government program. We are now talking about doing most of the countries of Europe did years ago.
Oh, my God.
The British did it 30 years ago. We are behind every country pretty nearly in Europe in this matter of medical care for our citizens.
There you have it. 56 years ago. 56 years ago, okay? That is unbelievable. Here's about 12 years ago, just a little refresher for people who can't remember recent history. Which one is Obama? 70. Oh, my God, I had it at 60.
It's harder for young people to save for a rainy day, let alone retirement. So Democrats aren't just running on good old ideas like a higher minimum wage. They're running on good new ideas like Medicare for all, giving workers seats on corporate boards, reversing the most egregious corporate tax cuts to make sure college students graduate debt-free.
Nothing new under the sun. See what I mean? And then, of course, you had...
I have a plan for Medicare for All, and I'm proud that it's the first health care plan by anyone in this presidential primary that lays out the full cost and how to pay for it. And here's the deal. It doesn't raise middle-class taxes by 1 penny, not 1 penny. If we make no other changes over the next 10 years, Americans will reach into their pockets and pay out about $11 trillion on insurance premiums, co-pays, deductibles, and uncovered medical expenses.
Okay, get the idea, get the general drift. So we can chew bubble gum and walk at the same time. We Democrats can. These are really old ideas that every time they're brought up, Republicans find an argument about you need to pull yourself up from your bootstraps. You need to be self-reliant. And no one can think of anything that saps the American energy, that saps the American potential, other than, working for a minimum wage that does not pay the bills. Getting killed by medical expenses, getting wiped out for long-term care, which Medicare does not cover when you're, in your last final years, and maybe your balance is gone, or you can't take a shower without somebody being in the house because you're afraid you'll fall. You know what I'm saying? So I just thought we would give a shout out to JFK 56 years ago. You can go even further back if you want to hear arguments for Medicare for all. You can go back to Truman. You could keep on going. All right. Now our job is to show you the alternative universe that we currently live in. Not only are we not likely to make any progress in the near future because of the Republican Party and their sick desire to serve corporate America, their sick desire to see Americans weakened, to see them work for less than what they're worth, to see them, be ripped apart by conspiracy theories and propaganda and all this. But they actually want to have you live in an alternative universe so that they can, A, have their way with you, B, defend the indefensible, because they have no exculpatory evidence for the witnesses that we heard testify under oath in the past couple of weeks. Okay, they have nothing. They have no defense. I mean, Lindsey Graham tried, his defense was Trump was too stupid to do it, right?
What I can tell you about the Trump policy toward the Ukraine, it was incoherent. It depends on who you talk to. They seem to be incapable of forming a quid pro quo. So, no, I find the whole process to be a sham, and I'm not going to legitimize it.
So that was his defense. Donald Trump is too stupid to, A, form a policy for Ukraine, and B, to pull off a quid pro quo. Well, I'll agree with he couldn't pull it off. He got caught. But I just want to show you what an alternative universe we live in, okay? These two clips ought to say it all for you. This is just the most bizarre thing I've experienced in my life, okay? Here's Adam Schiff, okay, closing one day of the hearings.
Now, my Republican colleagues, all they seem to be upset about with this is not that the president sought an investigation of his political rival, not that he withheld a White House meeting and $400 million in aid we all passed on a bipartisan basis to pressure Ukraine to do those investigations. Their objection is he got caught. Their objection is that someone blew the whistle. And they would like this whistleblower identified. And the president wants this whistleblower punished. That's their objection. Not that the president engaged in this conduct, but that he got caught. Their defense is, well, he ended up releasing the aid. Yes, after he got caught.
Okay. So, and then here's Devin Nunes yesterday.
For the last 3 years, it's not President Trump who got caught. It's the Democrats who got caught.
Oh, my God.
They got caught falsely claiming they had more than circumstantial evidence that Trump colluded with Russians to hack the 2016 election.
We never said they hacked together.
They got caught.
He welcomed it.
Orchestrating this entire farce with the whistleblower and lying about their secret meetings with him.
Oh, my God.
They got caught defending the false allegations of the Steele dossier, which was paid for by them.
No one defended it.
They got caught breaking their promise that impeachment would only go forward with bipartisan support because of how damaging it is to the American people. They got caught running a sham impeachment process featuring secret depositions, hidden transcripts, and an unending flood of Democrat leaks to the media.
Except none of that happened. As you know, the Republicans yesterday, when questioning witnesses and all the previous hearing days, said, I asked you in your deposition. The depositions were released publicly. There was no dungeon. There was no star chamber. There was no secret. There was... Listen, these people are shameless. You know why? You know why? Because if Trump goes down for failure to uphold the Constitution, then the entire grand old pervert party is dead. That's why. It would be the end of the GOP for at least decades to come. And they would rather save their party than save this democracy.
all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Alrighty, everybody. We are in our second pledge drive as a show that is on Free Speech TV. It began yesterday. I neglected to tell you about it. So let me just tell you, operators are standing by to take your cash. 877-378-8669 is the number you can call. 877-378-8669. This is to support our platform on Free Speech TV, where you can watch us on Dish 9415. We're on DirecTV 348. We're on Sling and Roku and Apple, thanks to the hard work that the people in Denver, Colorado at Free Speech TV do every single day. For this particular fundraiser, we have come up with some gifty little gifts for you. Of course, $20 will send you a Randi Rhodes Show, a bumper sticker. If you want a hat signed by me, $150 will get you one of those. My personal favorites this time are the two T-shirts we created for you and your enjoyment. One is just a Lock 'em Up T-shirt. It's a hashtag Lock 'em Up T-shirt. And the other one that is my personal favorite, Deep State University Debate Team. That's who we are, everybody. Deep State University Debate Team, okay? And that's $120. We'll send that off to you, okay? So please do dial or visit freespeech.org/donate. All right. I want to explain to you what I'm going to show you now. This is the alternative universe, okay? This is in spite of facts, in spite of truth, in spite of oaths, in spite of testimony, in spite of direct evidence, in spite of all of it, how the president and his protectors, his soldiers, his capos, whatever you want to call them, okay? His good fellows, his stupid fellows, whatever, are protecting a party by protecting this president, because they understand that with him goes the Republican Party and it will never be in power, at least for the next 20 years. They get that, and that's why they're willing to lie so boldly. So let's do this little portion here that I think is, just so illustrative of, what happened here, okay? Here is Ambassador Sondland saying, yes, there is a quid pro quo.
These emails show that the leadership of the State Department, the National Security Council, and the White House were all informed about the Ukraine efforts from May 23rd, 2019, until the security aid was released on September 11th, 2019. I will quote from some of those messages with you shortly. Fourth, as I testified previously, Mr. Giuliani's requests were a quid pro quo for arranging a White House visit for President Zelensky. Mr. Giuliani demanded that Ukraine make a public statement announcing the investigations of the 2016 election, DNC server, and Burisma.
Okay. Yesterday, after all this testimony, after these 2 weeks, here's Kevin McCarthy.
Well, I think it's very clear there was no quid pro quo. I think if you look at Sondland and the length of the interview, I would sum it up with one individual asking him questions, Congressman Mike Turner. He asked him, "Is anybody on the planet tell you in the process there had to be a quid pro quo or anything with holding up the aid?" He said no.
Because in Republican world, unless you say, hey, Sondland, go execute a quid pro quo, which obviously the president didn't know what that was. He just knows a shakedown. He just knows extortion. He just knows corruption. He knows how to do it. He knows how to task people with doing it. And he knows how to, or he thinks he knows how to be above the law. So that's just amazing. You had testimony, yes, there was a quid pro quo. Not only did you have testimony that there was a quid pro quo, but you had testimony that everybody knew about it.
You've testified that the White House meeting that President Zelensky desperately wanted, and that was very important to President Zelensky, was it not?
Absolutely.
You've testified that that meeting was a quid pro quo for what the president wanted, these 2 investigations. Is that right?
Correct.
And that everybody knew it?
Correct.
This is painful. Okay. And here's Donald Trump.
There was no quid pro quo. There was nothing.
Did he also mention to me in the past the corruption related to the DNC server? Absolutely. No question about that.
There was no quid pro quo at all.
To be clear, what you just described is a quid pro quo. We do that all the time with foreign policy.
There was no quid pro quo, unlike Biden.
That's it. And that's why we held up the money.
Here's testimony from a Trump witness. Now, Trump lied this morning. I don't know if you saw his Unhinged interview, because most of us do not pay attention to that propaganda channel, but he did a 55-minute interview this morning with Fox and Friends. We'll get to it. But here you have Mick Mulvaney saying there was a quid pro quo. You have Gordon Sondland saying there was a quid pro quo. You have testimony that everybody in the White House knew that there was extortion, there was a bribe, there was a quid pro quo. He named names. He did. He said Mulvaney. He said Pompeo. He said Rudy Giuliani. He said Rick Perry. Everybody knew. Ambassador Volker testified. He knew. Vindman knew. Everybody knew. Everybody knew. Lindsey Graham is sticking with he's just too stupid to do it.
What I can tell you about the Trump policy toward the Ukraine, it was incoherent. It depends on who you talk to.
No.
They seem to be incapable of forming a quid pro quo.
Okay. They're just too stupid. Here is the Republicans' witness, Tim Morrison.
And what did Ambassador Sondland tell you that he told Mr. Yermak?
That the Ukrainians would have to have the prosecutor general make a statement with respect to the investigations as a condition of having the aid lifted.
That's their witness. They wanted Tim Morrison. They wanted Ambassador Kurt Volker. Those are the Republican witnesses. I know this because idiot boy Nunes wrote a letter to Adam Schiff requesting these 2 Republican witnesses. And even they blew up the story. Okay, even they did. But that did not stop Donald Trump from going on the TV this morning and say, well, see, now apparently, He didn't know Gordon Sondland, but Gordon Sondland testified that he had talked to Donald Trump 20 times, that they were so familiar with each other that they both used 4-letter words. They used, all kinds of, yeah, it's something I said, it's something I would say, right? But Trump went on the TV this morning to let us know that Sondland is a never-Trumper Hillary supporter.
By the way, check out his lawyers. They're Hillary Clinton lawyers. This guy has Hillary Clinton lawyers. They're Democrats.
Sondland.
But he's sitting there, Sondland, yeah. He's sitting there with Clinton lawyers. They're passing him notes all the time. And he didn't put the most important phrase in his 22-page statement that he read. The most important phrase was, I want nothing. Twice I said it. I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo.
He said that on September 9th, the day that the congressional investigation started.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Perfect example of a bribe.
And, in fact, you had a discussion, communication with the Secretary of State in which you said that logjam over aid could be lifted if Zelensky announced these investigations, right?
I did not. I don't recall saying the logjam over aid. I recall saying the logjam. I don't know that.
That's what you meant, right, Ambassador?
I meant that whatever was holding up the meeting, whatever was holding up our deal with Ukraine, I was trying to break. Again, I was presuming.
Well, here's what you said in your testimony a moment ago.
Okay.
Page 18. But my goal at the time was to do what was necessary to get the aid released, to break the logjam. Okay, that's still your testimony, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the military aid is also an official act. Am I right?
Yes.
This is not President Trump's personal bank account he's writing a check from. This is $400 million of U.S. taxpayer money, is it not?
Absolutely.
And there was a logjam in which the president would not write that U.S. check, you believed, until Ukraine announced these 2 investigations the president wanted, correct?
That was my belief.
Mr. Goldman.
Okay. All right. Here's the President of the United States of America.
And let me tell you, it's a hoax, it's a disgrace, it's an embarrassment to our country. Nancy Pelosi has done a terrible job as Speaker. There's never been a Speaker that's done so little. And she's totally incompetent. And Shifty, he stands up and he tells lies all day long, and even with that. So we have no due process. We can't have anything. And yet, not only did we win today, it's over. And some of the fair press, of which there isn't too much, said this thing is over.
This thing is over. Nancy Pelosi is a failure.
The evidence is clear that the president has used his office for his own personal gain, and in doing so undermined the national security of the United States by withholding military assistance to the Ukraine to the benefit of the Russians, that he has undermined the integrity of our elections by what he has done. Again, the Russian interference being ignored by him. And third, he has violated his oath of office.
And so here is Donald Trump early this morning on the Fox and Friends propaganda television show.
But I have to deal with crazy Nancy. I mean, she's crazy as a bedbug. She is nuts. And what she's doing, and she's not talented, she's highly overrated. All she's doing is sitting. She's not doing any work for the people. And now it turns out that the whole impeachment thing is a scam.
Gotcha. So,
and now on top of it, now you're starting to get some feedback that the IG report is coming out, and I think that will be
explosive.
The greatest political scandal in the history of our country.
Okay, so Nancy Pelosi is crazy. He has to deal with her. She's crazy as a bed bug. She gets nothing done. All right. Bills and resolutions. I don't want to go through the whole list, but I will tell you the very first one was For the People Act. That was to get money out of politics. It was also to give us paper ballots so that we could do recounts. It was also same-day registration, everything to do with voting, all right? We had an assault weapons ban of 2019. That's 66. We had H.R. 420, which is an interesting number for regulating marijuana like alcohol. Okay, that's H.R. 420, everybody. They're not stupid. They get it. We had H.R. 8, which was a comprehensive gun safety piece of legislation, Bipartisan Background Checks Act of 2019. H.R. 5, the Equality Act. H.R. 38, Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act. We had the assault weapons ban I mentioned. Medicare for All Act. That's H.R. 1384. These are all passed. Okay? Not only do we have H.R. 8, we had H.R. 1112. We had the Vaccination of All Children Act, H.R. 2527. We had a prescription drug bill to lower the price of prescription drugs for the Medicare program, right, for seniors, so that the government would now have the right to negotiate the cost of that Medicare. The government single-payer program for our seniors would pay for prescription drugs. We had H.R. 6, which was for the Dreamers. That was the DACA Act, making it official that they had the protections. We actually had a resolution, HJ Res 20, which was term limits. Yeah, term limits for members of Congress, and on and on and on and on. There were, in the last session, and the Democrats have only had control of Congress since 2019 because, we voted in 2018. They were sworn in 2019, right? They passed 250 pieces of legislation. The president is lying. Obviously, it's all he does. Okay, that's it. That's all this man does. He lies and he smears. Now, he wants to say Nancy Pelosi is crazy as a bedbug. Please give a little listen to what he said this morning about why he felt the need to defame and besmirch and smear Ambassador Masha Yovanovitch. Now, he could have fired her, and one of her last questions to the Republican, one of her last answers to one of the Republicans' questions was, listen, I understand I serve at the pleasure of the president. Not a problem. But why did he have to ruin my reputation? Here's why.
Ambassador that, everybody says is so wonderful, she wouldn't hang my picture in the embassy, okay? She's in charge of the embassy. She wouldn't hang it. It took like a year and a half or 2 years for her to get the picture up. She said bad things about me. She wouldn't defend me, and I have the right to change an ambassador. And Rudy didn't say good things, but he wasn't crazy about it. It wasn't like a major topic. But I have the right to change. This was an Obama person didn't want to hang my picture in the embassy. It's standard is you put the president of the United States picture in an embassy. This was not an angel, this woman, okay? There are a lot of things that she did that I didn't like.
She wouldn't hang his picture. But Nancy Pelosi is crazy. She wouldn't. Marie Yovanovitch's reputation had to be destroyed because it took her a year and a half, according to the president, who's probably never been in her office, but according to what he was hearing from Rudy. Now, any man that goes to Rudy Giuliani for foreign policy advice, to Lev Parnas, to Fruman, to Roger Stone, to Steve Bannon, to Steve Miller for foreign policy advice is running some sort of an operation. That they're not really concerned with foreign policy or advice. But the reason he calls Nancy Pelosi crazy as a bedbug today, and then when he's asked, why did you have to smear her, Marie Yovanovitch, why didn't you just let her go? It's because she didn't hang his picture fast enough. Took her a year and a half, according to what he hears, for her to hang his picture on her office wall, like the dear leader, like the mullahs demand, like some autocrat demands, like some religious freaking closed hermit society demands, like North Korea. Wow.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, here's the phone call testimony.
Now, you said that at some point Ambassador Sondland pulled out his cell phone and called President Trump. This was an unsecure cell phone, is that right?
Yes, sir.
In the middle of a restaurant in Kyiv?
Yes.
Now, you said that you were able to hear President Trump's voice through the receiver. How were you able to hear if it was not on speakerphone?
It was several things. It was quite loud when the president came on, quite distinctive. I believe Ambassador Sondland also said yesterday he often speaks very loudly over the phone, and I certainly experienced that. When the president came on, he sort of winced and held the phone away from his ear like this. And he did that for the first couple exchanges. I don't know if he then turned the volume down, if he got used to it, if the president's moderated his volume, I don't know. But that's how I was able to hear it.
And so you were able to hear some of what President Trump said to President Zelensky, is that right?
The first portion of the conversation, yes.
And what did you hear President Trump say to I'm sorry, not President Zelensky, to Ambassador Sondland?
What I hear the
president say to Ambassador Sondland?
Yeah, he clarified whether he was in Ukraine or not, and he said, yes, I'm here in Ukraine. And then Ambassador Sondland said he loves your ass, he'll do anything you want. He said he can do the investigation.
So you heard President Trump ask Ambassador Sondland, is he going to do the investigation?
Yes, sir.
What was Ambassador Sondland's response?
He said, oh, yeah, he's going to do it. He'll do anything you ask.
And was that the end of the Ukraine portion of the conversation?
Yes.
Afterwards, you described a follow-on conversation that you had with Ambassador Sondland, where you asked him, I think, generally, what did President Trump think of Ukraine? Is that right?
Correct.
What did Ambassador Sondland say to you?
He said he doesn't really care about Ukraine.
Did he use slightly more colorful language than that?
He did.
What did he say that he does care about?
He said he cares about big stuff.
Did he explain what he meant by big stuff?
Well, I asked him, well, what kind of big stuff? We have big stuff going on here, like a war with Russia. And he said, no, big stuff like the Biden investigation that Mr. Giuliani is pushing.
Now, were you familiar with the Biden investigation that he referenced at that point?
Yes, sir.
And how do you have such a specific and clear recollection of this conversation with the president and your conversation with Ambassador Sondland?
Yeah. So this was a very distinctive experience. I've never seen anything like this in my foreign service career. Someone at a lunch in a restaurant making a call on a cell phone to the President of the United States. Being able to hear his voice, it's a very distinctive personality, so we've all seen it on television. Very colorful language was used. They were directly addressing something that I had been wondering about working on for weeks and even months. A topic that had led to the recall of my former boss, the former ambassador. And so here was a person who said he had direct contact with the president and had said that over the course of time. Here he is actually having that contact with the president. Hearing the president's voice and them talking about this issue of the Biden investigation that I'd been hearing about.
All right, here's the president this morning on the propaganda TV show.
How about the guy with the telephone? How about that one? I guarantee you that never took place. He said he's sitting there listening to me. I spoke so few times to him. But the guy yesterday on the telephone, David Holmes, yes, I heard the conversation. Well, I have really good hearing. And I've been watching guys for 40 years make phone calls. Right. And I can't hear when and you could be 2 feet away. I can't hear people making calls. I can't hear the other side. The phone's up in the air unless you have it on a speakerphone.
Yeah, but Nancy Pelosi's crazy as a bed bug or whatever his, little metaphor was. Yeah, obviously the man screams. Obviously he yells. Obviously you could hear him, and every single person who ever sat next to somebody with a cell phone, especially like me, my mom screams. She screams on the phone because she can't hear well, so she assumes you can't hear her. Everybody that's next to me when I'm at the kitchen island is where I go after work to prepare, right? Of course, no recipe can start without chopping an onion. So I'm standing there with my cutting board, and I'm cutting it, and Howard is on the phone, still talking to business people, clients, whatever it is. I can hear what they're saying. I can hear him talking to his kids. I can hear everything. What's wrong with this man? It never happened. It never ever happened. Well, here's Jim Jordan getting slapped around on that theory too, asking David Holmes, why didn't Volcker tell us about it? And David Holmes says everybody knew.
The call happened on the July 25th. That's 4 months ago. The transcript's been out for 2 months. Maybe the ambassador thought this is nothing new here. But Shazam, last week you come forward with supposedly this new information. There is nothing different in there than what we had on the transcript. Maybe that's the reason their star witness, their first witness, didn't bring it up. But they had to have something. So you're their closing witness because you overheard the president talking to Ambassador Sondland.
Sir, if I could answer, I see 4 seconds left on the clock. I believe that
Mr. Holmes, you may take as long as you need.
Thank you, sir. I believe that Ambassador Taylor did already know when I briefed him when I returned from vacation on the 6th. It was not news to him that the president was pressing for a Biden investigation.
That's not what I asked. I asked why he didn't share with us.
Mr. Jordan, please do not interrupt the witness any further. Mr. Holmes,
this is exactly
Mr. Jordan's time has expired, but yours has not.
Okay, thank you,
You may
sir.
answer the question.
It's exactly my point. I briefed the call in detail to the deputy chief of mission, went away for a week, come back, I refer to the call, and everyone is nodding. Of course that's what's going on. Of course the president is pressing for a Biden investigation before he'll do these things the Ukrainians want. There was nodding agreement. So did I go through every single word in the call? No, because everyone by that point agreed. It was obvious what the president was pressing for. And Ambassador Taylor, as you've just outlined, had all those other interactions with all these other...
But he didn't share it with us.
Mr. Jordan, please do not interrupt.
But sir, then... but sir, my vivid recollection of an event I was involved with was a touchstone experience that to me
validated
And
sir,
Mr.
if I could
Jordan,
finish,
please do
what
not
we
interrupt.
believed. And Ambassador Taylor was not in that call.
And so all of a sudden last week, you got to come tell us, right?
Mr. Jordan,
Even though your boss
we will allow the witness to answer the question.
I'll finish with this.
Thank you.
He was involved in a number of other interactions, as you've outlined, that brought him to the same conclusion. It is quite possible that
he doesn't share the one that the guy he worked
Mr.
with.
Jordan,
He doesn't share that
Mr. Jordan, you may not like the witness's answer, but we will hear it.
There wasn't an answer. It's a
Mr.
filibuster.
Jordan, we will hear the witness's answer. Have you concluded, Mr. Holmes?
I have.
Well, Bill Taylor did bring it up, as you remember, from day one of these hearings last week. He said that his that one of his staff members, David Holmes, had told him that there was a phone call between Sondland and the president in a restaurant, and that David Holmes, who he didn't name, he just said a staffer in the restaurant, overheard the president say, so you're going to do these, he's going to do these investigations? And Sondland answers, he'll do anything for you. He loves your, right? And then they hang up. And then the staffer, who we now know as David Holmes, says to Sondland, well, what does he think about Ukraine? And Sondland's answer is he doesn't give a blank about Ukraine. He cares about the big stuff. What's the big stuff? And David Holmes says there's big stuff going on here. You got a war. Ukraine is in a hot war, a shooting war with Russia right now on their homeland. For me, that's the big stuff. What's the big stuff for him? And he said the investigations on the Bidens that Rudy Giuliani asked for. Taylor did testify to that. There is no, I mean, I guess I forgot to pull it, but I mean, it's totally memorable that happened. Okay, so poor little Jim Jordan, who is always filibuster. I mean, at the end of those hearings yesterday, and that was not the closing witness. Fiona Hill was the closing witness. They can't even get their witnesses right. You know why? They're not in the room. They walked out. They had no questions. I pointed that out yesterday afternoon. The Republicans stopped asking questions of the witnesses because the witnesses were pummeling their defenses. Any defense, if the president was too stupid, that there was no quid pro quo. Oh, yes, there was. That there was an exchange that was talked about. Investigations for military aid. Investigations for a White House meeting. Investigations even for a phone call between Zelensky and the president. It was all a quid pro quo. It was all a shakedown. It was extortion. It was bribery. It was the president would use his official office to grant what you need and what American foreign policy required of us to do in exchange for you lying and investigating Donald Trump's political rival.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force.
This, of course, is 1001.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Your ambassador to the EU, Mr. Sondland, in his opening statement said that there was quid pro quo. There was quid pro quo, he said, because you wanted an investigation into corruption in exchange for a visit to the White House or something like that.
Yeah, well, that's total nonsense. I do want always corruption. I say that to anybody. Why should we give money to a country that's known corrupt? It's a very corrupt country. I mean, I love the people in Ukraine. I know Ukrainian people. They're great people. But it's known as being the third most corrupt country in the world.
Is that true? The answer is no. Here are the top 10 most corrupt countries in the world. You'll notice Ukraine is not on them. The most corrupt country in the world is Iraq, then Pakistan, then Iran, Nigeria, Colombia, Angola, Mexico, Ghana, Myanmar, and Guatemala. But that set aside that the president just makes crap up all the time, there were questions about Ukraine and benchmarks to meet with regard to corruption, and there was testimony that those benchmarks had been met.
Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, I think the follow-up question that my colleague from New York did not ask you, but is relevant for everyone at home, isn't it true that the Department of Defense had certified that the anti-corruption requirements of Ukraine had been met when the hold was put on by the president?
That is correct.
So let's smear him a little bit. All right, so there's that. And then there was Laura Cooper.
This president, as a champion of anti-corruption, your testimony today is that on May 23, you certified that as far as it related to your duties, Ukraine had met the corruption concerns for the aid to be released. Is that right?
Sir, the Defense Department certified.
And after that date, inexplicably, the President of the United States puts a hold on security assistance. Is that right?
That was what I heard in July, yes.
Now, this anti-corruption president who cares so much about rooting out corruption in Ukraine, did he ever call you after he put the hold to say, Ms. Cooper, what's going on in Ukraine?
No, sir.
Ambassador Hale, did he ever call you to ask about an update on Ukraine corruption?
No, sir.
Yeah, I think we're pretty clear that the corruption benchmarks had been met, that they were certified met by our Department of Defense. Laura Cooper and Colonel Vindman obviously work together with the Department of Defense and testified that that had happened. Also, I think what's important to know is that Obama gave more than blankets to the Ukrainians.
The justification is that the Obama administration only provided blankets, so the Ukrainians should be grateful, even after being shaken down, that the Trump administration provided more. But the truth, Ms. Cooper, is that under the Obama administration and the European Reassurance Initiative, $175 million were provided from U.S. taxpayer dollars to the Ukrainians. Is that right?
Sir, I don't have that figure. The figure that we typically use is to say we've provided $1.6 billion to date. But I don't have the breakdown in front of me.
And the Obama administration also trained 5 military battalions of the Ukrainians. Is that correct?
Again, I don't have the figures in front of me, but yes, the training program began in the Obama administration, and we did train many forces.
And under the Obama administration founded Ukrainian Security Assistance Initiative, provided to the Ukrainians were armored Humvees, tactical drones, night vision devices, armored vests, and medical equipment. Is that correct?
These all sound like pieces of equipment that were provided in the Obama administration, to my recollection.
You'd agree that's a lot more than blankets, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, everything that you've been hearing on propaganda news networks, right-wing lunatic radio shows, conservative radio shows, idiot boy radio shows, everything that they're telling you is a lie. And I don't know why people want to believe the lie over believing in America and democracy and the rule of law, and that we don't extort, we don't shake down, we don't allow allies, to be accused of things that they're not doing. I don't understand why you have to defame an ambassador instead of just letting her go by saying what they said in the end. President lost confidence in you. That he's entitled to do that. But why did he have to defame these people? Why does he have to call Nancy Pelosi crazy and then say the reason he fired and defamed the ambassador is because she didn't hang his picture on her wall for a year and a half? And I will tell you this, Scotty found that fascinating. So he did a little research and found that on September 11th, 2017, there was a Washington Post story that clearly said that Donald Trump had not yet sent out his pictures for public offices to hang. So he just lied about even that crazy part. I mean, this is just so unbelievable. And then this morning, in his crazy, it was off the hook. I mean, when Fiona Hill testified that the Republicans are repeating Russian intelligence agency talking points. That the whole idea of the CrowdStrike server being in Ukraine, by the way, CrowdStrike is a publicly traded company. I also pulled CrowdStrike's contributions to various, political parties. And here it is. This right here is a short list of their National Republican Congressional Committee donations. What did I just say? This is CrowdStrike's donations to the National Republican Congressional Committee. You can get this at opensecrets.org, which is Common Cause, who keeps track of all the money that they can see. Now, we have dark money that you can't see that's, funneled through PACs who don't have to disclose. However, when somebody does give money that you can see, it's accounted for on opensecrets.org or, the public reports, right? So on July 21st, 2017, CrowdStrike gave $40,000 to the National Republican Congressional Committee. On May 17th, 2018, CrowdStrike gave $40,000 to the National Republican Congressional Committee. On April 21st, 2017, CrowdStrike gave $39,500 to the National Republican Congressional Committee. And on August 17th, 2017, they gave $114. I have no idea why. But now, when Fiona Hill was testifying, she begged the Republicans to please stop lying about CrowdStrike, number one, that because CrowdStrike is a publicly traded company, obviously its donations are trackable, and they give to the Republican Party. And number two, the owner of the guy who founded, not the owner because it's public, but the guy who founded CrowdStrike is not Ukrainian. He is he's a Russian. Russia, Ukraine, two different countries. Ukraine, ally, giant, biggest country in Europe, by the way. Russia, some also ran, broke down communist authoritarian oligarchy. Two different countries. And the president keeps repeating that this guy at CrowdStrike was Ukrainian. That is not true. She also begged them to stop repeating that the server was in Ukraine because that is a Russian intelligence agency piece of propaganda that they want perpetuated in the United States in order to pull the United States away from its ally, Ukraine. It serves their purpose. And she was very upset that the Republicans keep repeating Russian propaganda.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com. All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Based on questions and statements I've heard, some of you on this committee appear to believe that Russia and its security services did not conduct a campaign against our country, and that perhaps, somehow, for some reason, Ukraine did. This is a fictional narrative that has been perpetrated and propagated by the Russian security services themselves. The unfortunate truth is that Russia was the foreign power that systematically attacked our democratic institutions in 2016. This is the public conclusion of our intelligence agencies, confirmed in bipartisan congressional reports. It is beyond dispute, even if some of the underlying details must remain classified.
Okay, so there is Fiona Hill in her opening statement warning the GOP that they are repeating Russian intelligence agency talking points, Russian propaganda, in order to give cover to Russia for hacking. Now, Russia clearly hacked. The Russian intelligence agencies clearly hacked into the DNC. They clearly hacked into Hillary Clinton's personal emails. Donald Trump welcomed it. Nobody said there was a conspiracy between Donald Trump and the Russian intelligence agencies to do the hacking. That is not anything that anybody ever said. What people said was that he welcomed it and encouraged it and benefited from it. That's what Mueller found. That's what's in the Mueller report, and that is the truth, because we have Donald Trump standing on a stage on July 27th saying, Russia, if you're listening, I hope you can find the 30,000 emails that are missing. Our press will reward you mightily. And later that day, Russia tries to hack into Hillary Clinton's servers. So that is the conspiracy. But she keeps saying, stop talking about this CrowdStrike thing. The guy, first of all, who founded it is not Ukrainian. He's Russian. And you idiots, on the Intelligence Committee ought to know the difference between the two countries. And you ought to know when something is propaganda coming from an adversary's national intelligence services. And that you have a very sick man as president who continues to put that out there. And you're doing the same damage to the United States that he's doing. This was him this morning.
They have the server, right, from the DNC, Democratic National Committee.
Who has the server?
Now, the FBI went in and they told him, get out of here. We're not giving it to you. They gave the server to CrowdStrike or whatever it's called, which is a company owned by a very wealthy Ukrainian. And I still want to see that server. The FBI has never gotten that server. That's a big part of this whole thing. Why did they give it to a Ukrainian company?
Are you sure they did that?
Are you sure?
Are you sure they gave it to Ukraine?
Well, that's what the word is, and that's what I asked actually in my phone call, if you know.
That is a debunked conspiracy theory. And in fact, there was plenty of testimony about it.
I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of your wealthy people, the server. They say Ukraine has it. Now, Dr. Hill, is this a reference to this debunked conspiracy theory about Ukraine interference in the 2016 election that you discussed in your opening statement as well as with Chairman Schiff?
The reference to CrowdStrike and the server, yes, that's correct.
And it is your understanding that there is no basis for these allegations, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, isn't it also true that some of President Trump's most senior advisors had informed him that this theory of Ukraine interference in the 2016 election was false?
That's correct.
So is it your understanding then that President Trump disregarded the advice of his senior officials about this theory and instead listened to Rudy Giuliani's views?
That appears to be the case, yes.
Oh, God. And he's still doing it. This morning, he started rambling about the Steele dossier, which was not relied on for anything, and Ukraine.
They thought I was going to win, and they said, how could we stop him? They wrote up the phony fake dossier, the disgusting fake dossier, and they tried to have it put out prior to the election, just to show you how incompetent they were. They spent millions and millions of dollars. Hillary Clinton paid for it, and the Democrats. A lot of it had to do, they say, with Ukraine.
But Mr. President,
it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
It's not interesting. It's a debunked conspiracy theory that you keep saying. Because you're an illegitimate president. You know that you have to cheat in order to win. And you're willing to do it again in 2020. And you want this time for China to come. Or you want this time for Ukraine to lie. Or you want this time for... this is just... This is mass madness. And what's very... listen, here's a previous ambassador, Mike McFaul, who was the ambassador to Russia.
And when the President of the United States says in a call to President Zelensky, you need to look into this CrowdStrike thing, this DNC server thing, that is him repeating Putin propaganda. I want to be clear about that. That is what the Russians have been feeding into our news cycle, into our news media. I just wrote an op-ed about it this week in the Washington Post, reminding people it's not just the stuff they do with trolls and bots. It's they put this stuff into the media, and then our media, usually on the right, then amplifies it. And the President of the United States has been taken by this myth. Propagated by Mr. Giuliani, propagated by others, and Fiona Hill was putting down a marker. Folks, we have to stop this. And she was, I think, trying to preempt what might come later in this hearing about somehow, the Ukrainian interference in our election, that is propaganda put out by the Kremlin, and we as a country have to stop amplifying it in our debate as we run up to the 2020 election.
So, I got a small stream sound effect. I was going to play Trump. I always want corruption, which is what he said this morning. But this is well. Here's where we are. If we don't get very active here, if we don't start calling these senators, these GOP senators, if we don't start speaking up for our democracy, if we don't start talking about how this is a nation of laws and whether or not you like this man, you don't like this man, he obviously broke the law. He obviously lies to the American people regularly. He obviously repeats Putin's propaganda. He obviously tweets it. He retweets it. He amplifies it. He smears veterans he doesn't like. I mean, this was so disgusting what they did to Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. I just couldn't even believe what they were willing to do. It's just to save their party and not to save our democracy or our country. That's why they're doing it. They figure if Trump goes down, the entire GOP goes down with it, because the previous GOP president got us into this endless war in Iraq based on a lie, tortured people, literally, and created ISIS. And now this one is breaking the law 8 ways to Sunday, spouting Russian propaganda, aligning himself with every autocrat in the world, from Duterte to Putin to Kim Jong-un to Xi Jinping, okay? And literally doing the most damage that we've ever seen done to the rule of law in this country. So if we don't start getting active and calling these senators and telling them, it's time to choose between your party and this country.
To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
The bottom line is all of those witnesses, they're all shifty shifts. Don't forget, there was no due process. You can't have lawyers. We couldn't have any witnesses.
That is a lie. In fact, the fact checkers have checked this morning's little 53-minute appearance on Fox News, and they have documented 18 false statements in his Fox and Friends appearance this morning. He lied almost 20 times on Fox News this morning. This is just unbelievable. Look, the evidence is clear. The president did it. He did it, and he got caught because he's an idiot. It's not that he was an idiot and couldn't think of it. As Lindsey Graham said, it's not that they had an incoherent Ukraine policy. The Ukraine policy, as set forth by Rudy Giuliani, Mick Mulvaney, Mike Pompeo, everybody in the White House, as was testified to, they all knew. Everybody knew. Everyone knew what the policy was, and it was to shake down, it was to extort, it was to bribe Ukraine. It was to take things that Ukraine desperately needed. The backing of the United States, a formal White House, visit to show Russia that the United States was backing Ukraine in this Russian-Ukrainian war, so that Zelensky, the new president, could negotiate with Vladimir Putin from a position of strength, saying, yes, you outgun us, you outman us militarily, but we have the full support and backing of the United States of America. Let's do a peace deal. Let's end this occupation. Let's end this shooting war. Let's end your incursion, your invasion into the eastern part of Ukraine, the Donbass region. Let's do that. Let's sit down and talk. And Trump wouldn't give it to him. He wouldn't give him a phone call. He wouldn't give him a meeting. He wouldn't give him the military aid unless and until Zelensky would lie and say that they were investigating the CrowdStrike conspiracy, the 2016 CrowdStrike conspiracy, and unless and until they said that they were going to investigate the Bidens, his political opponent. That's illegal. You can't do it. It violates not just the oath of office, not just the office of the presidency, not just the duty to faithfully execute the laws and not break them, but it also violates our foreign policy. People were sitting there completely confused What the hell is going on? And now, the beauty part of these hearings, if you watch them, if you were a decent citizen and you watch them, is that now you know how many brilliant, smart, trusted, nonpartisan people work their tails off every day for a government salary in order to do diplomacy and avoid war with adversaries around the world, to come to the end of a Cold War, to come to the end of a Russian invasion, to come to the... People work their butts off. And they all are talking and meeting and trying to keep our policy on the same page so that we speak from a position of unity and a position of strength. And they're speaking at the behest of the president of the United States. And now nobody knows who to talk to. Oh, talk to Rudy? Really? Rudy Giuliani's going to run our foreign policy? That particular freak is going to run American foreign policy? A man who apparently is accountable to no one. It's so sick. And that the people inside our State Department, the people inside our embassies, the people inside our Department of Defense, the people inside our State Department, we're all saying, stop pursuing this crazy conspiracy theory. Let's get to the real business of letting Ukraine and Russia sit down and negotiate an end to this war. Let's do it. Let's go forward. Let's give them what they need to defend themselves, but let's also give them the backing of the United States. And Donald Trump saw that as a thing of an official act that he could leverage for a thing of value for his own personal benefit. So he could cheat. So he could cheat in an election. Look, once a cheater, always a cheater. The man has cheated his whole life. That's why he doesn't want to release his tax returns. He's a tax cheat. He cheats on his wives. He cheats at golf. And he cheats at business. There's an older story in the Washington Post. I think I put it in the homework today so you could do a little flashback and recall that Donald Trump, when he was a businessman, when he would talk to publicly traded companies, they didn't want him on the call because they were always afraid that he would violate securities law, that he would use insider information, that he would do something to, jeopardize their businesses. They never even wanted him on their phone calls because he's a cheater. Robert Mueller testified that Donald Trump committed perjury, that he lied generally in his written answers that Mueller was able to get him to write. Robert Mueller's report said he obstructed justice 10 separate times. The man cheats. And if he wants to sit on Fox News and he wants to say that these were shifty shifts witnesses.
The bottom line is all of those witnesses, they're all shifty shifts. Don't forget, there was no due process. You can't have lawyers. We couldn't have any witnesses.
Then he's going to have to say why he won't let Mike Pompeo or Mick Mulvaney or Rudy Giuliani or Rick Perry or John Bolton or Charles Kupperman testify. Why is he obstructing what he believes would be exculpatory evidence? If he believes that Pompeo will defend him, if he believes that Bolton could shed some light that would, be in his favor, if he thinks Mulvaney would shed light that would be in his favor, if he thinks Giuliani would shed light that would be in his favor, why doesn't he allow them to testify? Because he knows they can't. Bolton finally got his Twitter account back from the White House, who had taken over Bolton's Twitter account. Apparently, I don't know, they changed his password or something so he couldn't log on, and Bolton had to go through Twitter and finally get Twitter to return to John Bolton his own personal Twitter account. Not his official, but his personal. And today, he started tweeting. Now, listen, John, I get that you want to cash out and cash in. $2 million payday awaits you. I promise you, if you testified and you became, the John Dean of this whole thing, your book would sell a whole lot better. A whole lot better. We're still waiting for the unredacted Mueller report. We're still waiting for Don McGahn, who's mentioned 1 billion times in the Mueller report, to be cleared by the court to testify. We expect that decision on Monday. Whether or not Don McGahn, the former White House counsel, can testify. Look, he does what every autocrat does. He puts propaganda out there. He runs the clock. He lives in an alternative universe. He creates facts Kellyanne Conway gave you a heads up. She said he likes alternative facts, meaning alternative reality, meaning things that didn't happen that he wants to say did happen. He likes to promote conspiracy theories. He likes to promote himself over this country. He likes autocrats. I mean, there are phone calls that are still locked up. You know, there was a call with Putin where Donald Trump got on the phone, first phone call with Putin and told the former KGB guy that he wants a friendship with Kim Jong-un and all the authoritarians that are hostile to the United States. He needs to know how does he cozy up to them, because they have something Donald Trump doesn't have. Complete control of the media, complete control of the people and what they believe to be true. He called Duterte, Shinzo Abe. Hey, Shinzo, nominate me for a Nobel Prize. I mean, this is sick.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
While Ambassador Volker and I visited the front, as a member of my staff accompanied Ambassador Sondland. Ambassador Sondland met with Mr. Yermak. Following that meeting, in the presence of my staff at a restaurant, Ambassador Sondland called President Trump and told him of his meetings in Kyiv. The member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations. Ambassador Sondland told President Trump the Ukrainians were ready to move forward. Following the call with President Trump, the member of my staff asked Ambassador Sondland what President Trump thought about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland responded that President Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden, which Giuliani was pressing for. At the time I gave my deposition on October 22nd, I was not aware of this information.
So he did testify about it, and Holmes testified about it, and the phone call, the July 25th transcript, they were walked through it. Each and every witness was walked through it, including Donald Trump and the GOP's witnesses. I mean, they did call their witnesses. Their witnesses were Volker, Tim Morrison, Ambassador Sondland. Because Ambassador Sondland had given $1 million to Donald Trump, and still he wouldn't take the fall. So Sondland lied. I mean, he lied about a lot of stuff. I mean, there's no question that man lied. And if it was just his testimony, I would have problems with it because he's a liar. So you can make that argument. If you lie now, or were you lying then, or you're lying now? Because Sondland decided to split the baby. What Sondland decided to do was to give the impeachment inquiry Pompeo and Mulvaney and Rick Perry and Giuliani and, Volker. He decided that he would give all these people, he would say that they all knew, they were in on it. It was a scheme. It was a plot. It was a plan. Everything was in exchange for they wanted an official act from the United States. And that official act was withheld pending, the lying about the CrowdStrike server and the investigations into the Bidens. So there was obviously extortion going on, and a bribe that was, and still to this day, Zelensky never got his White House visit. So, they say, oh, the crime wasn't complete. Well, you don't have to murder somebody to be accused of attempted murder, but this was a complete crime because Zelensky has never gotten his White House meeting. But that said, what Sondland wouldn't give was that he understood that it was a violation of the law. So he decided he would not say that he understood military aid was being held up. Although he admits it in questioning, he won't say it to the Republicans, but in questioning by the Democrats, he admits, yes, the military aid. Yes, I knew it was military. I mean, it's just so sick how they try to split the baby here because they all broke the law too. They're accessories to bribery. That means there's a conspiracy to defraud the United States of America. And as I said early on, this is a RICO violation. What you have here is the entire executive branch under Donald Trump running a racket a racketeering and corrupt enterprise. This is a RICO violation. Now, I don't expect that the Democrats will come up with an article of impeachment that invokes RICO, but they should, because every single person, from the Secretary of State to the President of the United States, even Mike Pence was, implicated by Sondland and Volcker and Tim Morrison. And I mean, everybody understood what was going on. Pence knew. Mulvaney knew. OMB, right? Everybody knew. And they were all aiding and abetting the conspiracy theory, the lie, and the bribery, and the extortion, and the scam. The whole entire corrupt organization. And that's why I'm saying to you, whether you like this president, you think he's a tough guy, you like the racism, whatever it is about him that you dig, okay? Whatever it is about him that you just, oh, I've never seen anything like him, and I just, he broke the law, and America is in peril. Our democracy is in danger. It is being attacked by a country we're going to be more like than we'll be like ourselves. We will be more like Russia. We will be more like the Philippines. We will be more like Turkey. We will be more like Saudi Arabia than we will be like America if this man is not held to account. Because if he's not, who will be? Who will be? And for those of you who like whataboutism, imagine Obama did this. Imagine Obama called the Saudis and said, you could be in the G7, we want you in the G7, but you just killed Jamal Khashoggi. And you just tortured your relatives and killed one of them in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Imagine if Obama reached out to Russia and told Russia that they could be back in the G8, even though they annexed Crimea and they're fighting a live war with Ukraine, our ally. The President of the United States is a very serious job, and we need serious people. The President of the United States is supposed to talk to, leaders across the world and find common ground where he can and listen to what they're saying so he can absorb, and then he can realize where we have substantive agreements and we can work, and where we have substantive disagreements and they have to meet anti-corruption benchmarks in order to get F-35s, in order to get into the G8, in order to get into NATO. But this president does nothing about, like that. This president is trying to befriend every dictator in the world who cheats at their elections because he wants that. He wants to be able to do that. He wants complete control over the media. He wants complete control over Congress. He doesn't even want to go to Congress, okay? He finds Congress an appendage he doesn't need. Well, we have 3 co-equal branches of government. That is what makes America an amazing country. We are a nation of laws, not a nation of men. And if the GOP understands, which I believe they do, that when Donald Trump is, destroyed because he's just another crook. Steve Bannon had a stronger word about it. He said, Donald Trump's presidency will fail when Americans realize he's just another something bag. And he is just another something bag who cheated and cheats at everything and is cheating us. Cheating us from progress, cheating us out of clean water, cheating us out of clean air, cheating us out of, being in the 21st century. Truly. Brother David.
I love the smell of impeachment in the morning.
It smells like victory.
You think?
Yeah.
Sister. Okay, let me, a quick shout out to the chat room. You know what to do. Tell anyone you know to go to www.randirhodes.com and or call the pledge line. I want those T-shirts. I'm like Cruella de Vil with the puppies. Okay, so I'm going to just drop kick into context. Last night I went to bed on a cloud of happiness because A, it was my day off, so I did not have to commiserate with bereaved Medicare beneficiaries or marketplace consumers. And I just saw It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And don't go, 3-sentence review. Don't go expecting a Mr. Rogers biopic. Bring Kleenex. remember why Mr. Rogers' spirit matters and still matters.
Oh.
It's very beautiful. The Hanks is at Streepian levels, and Mr. Reese has never been better. And
He's
Cooper is
amazing.
God.
Tom Hanks is a truly amazing individual.
He's unbelievable. He just is Mr. Rogers, but I digress.
Wow.
And then I woke up this morning on a high from that and went to my computer, and there was Randy Rainbow's latest parody on my feed of He's Just a Girl Who'll Quit Pro Quo, and I fell out of bed.
So I wish we could play music on this show, which we can't.
I understand.
But I will tell you, for those of you who don't know, on Twitter there are, Trump's rants of I don't want nothing, I don't want nothing, that were done a la the white supremacist Morrissey, that were done a la the Ramones, that were done.
Right.
I mean, there's so many great parodies out there.
There's a lot of stuff out there. Pardon me. I can't recommend it strongly enough. If you haven't seen it, catch it, because he just keeps topping himself, that one. And then I went down and started making my eggs at my kitchen island, and November 22nd.
Yeah.
And so thank you for starting with what you started with, because it's true. That was the
not
pivotal
only is
garden
it true,
time.
but the nerve of this president. I mean, Ronald Reagan was shot, but JFK was assassinated.
Assassinated in front of all of us.
And this, in front of the whole world. It was. I remember that. I mean, I was a little
Same
kid,
here.
but
Same here.
I remember being let out of school early and coming home to find my mother on the bed, hysterical, crying. But the nerve of Donald Trump to say, "No president has been treated worse than me." Are you freaking kidding me? I mean, just on the simplest things, he is incapable of understanding America, our history, the losses we've suffered, the victories we've had. He doesn't get it.
Clear for takeoff.
Whether you're listening to me, Mark Levine, every